Say, as I mention your name, if you could approach the podium would be great. Let's begin with our moderator, His Excellency the Honorable Mr. Yasar Yakis. We've had a chance to get to know him earlier today, and we very much look forward to his chairmanship. I would suggest in the middle, Mr. Yakis, if possible, since... No? Okay, as you like. Mr. Yakis has kindly agreed to serve as chairman and moderator for the panel discussion. Thank you very much. In addition to that, we have not yet had the chance to get to know him, but Professor Talha, who is assistant professor from the Istanbul Şehir University, he will be giving also a presentation after the panel discussion. There was a mistake in the program I have to apologize for. He's not in the program that you received today, but he'll be lecturing immediately after the panel. Thank you very much for being here, Professor Köse. In addition to that, we have His Excellency Ambassador Osman Faruk Loğoğlu. Very honored to have you here with us today. Former Turkish ambassador to the United States, member of parliament, and very distinguished Turkish politician. Perhaps we could give maybe a warm welcome to both of the new speakers who have not yet had a chance to speak. Also, Master Professor Köse. The second group of speakers I will be meeting for the first time now, so I'm hoping they are in the room. First of all, Professor Dr. Bülent Aras, are you here with us? Professor Aras? No. Okay, so I just wanted to check about that. What about Professor Dr. Mustafa Kibaroglu? Yes? Mustafa also no? Okay. So, all right, the lunchtime may have gotten to us there. What about Ceren Mutuş Toprakseven? Are you with us as well? No? Okay, so it's looking like we have a smaller panel than planned, which is good in the name of time efficiency. It will allow each of the speakers to perhaps contribute more. And the final person who is planned to speak for the panel is Mr. Shahid Najam. Shahid, are you with us? Shahid is also not with us. Therefore, I would ask, let's go with the flow, as they say, improvise. If you could all go a little bit closer, we can have a smaller discussion, which does have the benefit, I know Ambassador Loğoğlu has limited time, so we should definitely make the most of the time that he has. And then after the panel discussion, we will have the lecture of Professor Köse. So I would now ask that the panel is complete, for maybe us all to give a warm welcome for, once again, the Honorable Mr. Yasar Yakis and the panelists for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will act as moderator, but slightly in different manner from regular moderator's task. Sometimes moderators substitute themselves in the place instead of on the place of the speakers. So I will not substitute myself. I will only introduce them, and they were already introduced. And perhaps I would like to change the order, with your permission, of the speakers, because Mr. Loğoğlu, Ambassador Loğoğlu, is the deputy chairman of the main opposition party in Turkey, and he told me that he has a meeting in the parliament with his party. So to benefit more from his wisdom, we will listen to him first. He will take questions, and according to time availability, before I pass the word to the second speaker, or we will receive the questions after both of you have delivered initial remarks. So I now invite Ambassador Loğoğlu to share with us whatever he has in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. He has always been a very wise and kind gentleman, and he has demonstrated his kindness once again to first allow me to speak first, and even to let me go because of my duties in the Parliament. It has always been a pleasure to work with him and for him, and it is a very wonderful feeling to be with the minister here once again. Now, the topic of the panel is Turkey, a regional power, safeguarding a fragile security balance. I'm going to address that topic, but before I do, this concept of cultural diplomacy is a very intriguing one. And when you Google the Google, you immediately run into an article by Minister Yakis about the concept of cultural diplomacy. I do want to bring a different dimension to that concept, because I was involved in a workshop about 3 years ago with a number of participants, and that workshop did turn into a book edited by the sponsoring institution, and it's called American Negotiating Behavior. Now, this was in a series of other similar books on the negotiating behavior of other countries like China, like France, like Germany, and so forth. Not one yet on Turkish negotiating behavior, but probably that's in the pipeline. The point, the connection between negotiating behavior and cultural diplomacy is that in the manner nations negotiate, that is, when we say nations, delegations negotiate on behalf of their nations, a group of Americans, a group of Turkish diplomats, a group of Russian diplomats. And one consistent pattern or trend that affects and shapes their negotiating behavior are their cultural constructs, their cultural background. So each nation exhibits a different kind of negotiating behavior depending on the characteristics of their culture. That's all I want to say about that subject. I think Google is a wonderful institution, so you can go and search for more if the subject interests you. Our topic, Turkey, a regional power safeguarding a fragile security balance. Turkey is located in a very difficult neighborhood. I think it is at the epicenter of all the major conflicts ongoing at the moment on our humble planet, whether it is the problems in the Caucasus, in the Balkans, in the Middle East, the Arab Spring, the Iranian nuclear issue, the Iraqi situation, the Syrian situation. No matter which direction you look, even the situation in Afghanistan, Turkey sits right in the middle of these conflicts. So what Turkey does and says is important. And it is also important because Turkey is a big country in terms of its economy, in terms of its population, in terms of its historical background, or to put it in more recognizable form, because of its strategic depth. That's a notion used by our foreign minister, Davutoğlu. Turkey has a powerful military. Turkey has problems with its neighbors. Turkey is a member of NATO. So all these assets make Turkey a pivotal country in terms of security in our region. Now, Turkey traditionally used to be a country that was predictable, that provided or generated security around it in terms of with its foreign policy and with its approach to the different problems around it. But this has changed, and here my minister may get a little upset with me because I'm going to be critical of the current approach of the Turkish government to the different issues around us. But I think blind criticism is one thing, but criticism to make wrong things right is another thing. And I do it in the second spirit, that is, in order to help the rectification of Turkish foreign policy, because, as I said, doing the right thing, or whatever we do is important, but doing the right thing would be helpful to the region around us. Now, one of the problems with the current foreign policy in Turkey is while the entire world, even the Obama administration, has opted for a multilateralist approach, Turkey is going in the opposite direction and opting for a unilateralist approach. That is a sense of a very strong self-confidence in the ability, capacity, and competence of Turkey to resolve things, to resolve problems around it, and to resolve them by itself, on its own. Yes, talking to others, but at the end of the day, they say, we are the ones that can really resolve this problem. But in this day and age, unless you combine your energies, your capacities, your assets with those of others, especially like-minded states, you cannot really get very far. And of course, the measure of this is very concrete: performance, results. And when you look at that, you have a very, very discomforting situation in terms of what Turkish foreign policy has achieved and has failed to achieve. So let's move to the second tier, and let's look at our neighbors. Now, the catchy slogan of Foreign Minister Davutoğlu was zero neighbors, zero problems with, in fact, that's where we are, but I'll get to it in a minute. Zero problems with neighbors. Okay, let's start with Iran. Our relations with Iran are experiencing tensions because of our differences over Syria, because of the Iranian nuclear program. Yes, we are trying to be helpful, but also because of the NATO missile defense and the installation of a radar base in eastern Turkey, which Iran feels is a direct threat to its security. And Iranian generals, even in fact Chief of Staff, has threatened Turkey directly, saying that if this is against us, we will take care of the problem. This is the first time that Turkey has been threatened by Iran in the post-Cold War situation. Even in the Cold War context, Turkey really never received threats from the Soviet Union or USSR at the time directly. But even the Russian Federation today is uncomfortable with this radar station in eastern Turkey. Moving to Iraq, Iraq is accusing Turkey of interference in its internal affairs. And our relations with the central government in Baghdad is a little murky. It's a little unclear. It's not very healthy. It's not very straightforward. Syria, Turkey is literally at the brink of an armed clash with Syria. Yes, what Bashar Assad is doing in Syria is terrible, and we certainly condemn what he's doing to his people. But the state of relations between Turkey and Israel is such that things can easily get out of control, and these two neighbors that were so close only a year ago could find themselves in a military confrontation. Israel, we had very close relations with Israel. Now we are talking about hard power, using our aircraft and ships to protect humanitarian convoys, and we are not talking to Israel. The same applies to the Greek Cypriots, who are doing oil and gas exploration in Eastern Mediterranean, and we said, you can't do that, we'll take care of you if you do that. We haven't done anything, but that is the attitude. So there is a basic shift, contrary to what's being claimed by the government, away from the use of soft power. We skipped smart power altogether, to the threat of use of hard power, hard military power. This is a big change in Turkey's approach. The third point, and I have only 6, and I'll be very brief. The third point is the shift of access in Turkish politics. I've said this for the past 3 years. Turkey's relations with the European Union, especially with the European Union, is at a standstill. And Turkey is no longer a country from the Middle East, but a country of the Middle East. Now you might say, what's wrong with that? Well, Turkey was different with its democracy, with its secular democracy, with its close ties with the the Western community of nations, being a member of NATO, the Council of Europe, and especially its commitment to accession in the European Union. The European Union is a forgotten deal for both sides, for both the Turkish government and many of our European friends. And Turkey is now looking more and more in all directions except the West, except our commitment for EU membership. And this brings us to the fourth point, because I participated in a television debate program the other day, and one young academician thought, I can corner the ambassador. And he asked me, look, Ambassador, you said 3 years ago that there was a shift of access in Turkish foreign policy, and now you are talking about Turkey being a subcontractor of other nations. Isn't there a clash, a conflict between these two views? And I said, no, not at all. One is the result of the other. When you are no longer an equal member of the Euro-Atlantic family of nations, when you are not an equal member of the Euro-Atlantic nations and you yourself have taken yourself out of that family, then you begin to be used by that larger community, and that's why you become a subcontractor of views and approaches from those countries. The fifth point I would like to make here is the Middle East peace process. The Arab-Israeli conflict and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which is called, I think appropriately, the mother of all conflicts, or the core of all conflicts in the region. Now, Turkey was a very, very important regional player in this context, given the state of our relations with both the Arabs and Israel. But after our relationship with Israel began to go down, and we lost a sense of mutual confidence between Turkey and Israel, Turkey is out of the equation of the Middle East peace process. And Turkey cannot play a role in the Middle East peace process, and this is a strategic loss for the region. So tying it to the title of our panel, Turkey, a regional power safeguarding a fragile security balance. Unfortunately, we are not playing that role of not only balancing, but also bringing peace, greater stability to the region by promoting peace between Israel and the Arabs, especially the Palestinians. Now, you hear a great deal about the popularity of the Turkish Prime Minister in the Arab street. This is a great asset. And we are very proud of the fact that the Turkish Prime Minister is so popular in the Arab street. But instead of putting this popularity to good use by promoting and by working for a settlement between Israel and its Arab neighbors, the Turkish government tried to inflate this popularity by increasing its enmity and hostile discourse toward Israel. So it didn't play a positive function in the Middle East. Finally, the sixth point is the danger of a sectarian polarization in the region. And here too, I think Turkey has a vital role to play because we not only represent a Muslim population, but we are also a democracy, and we are also a secular democracy. And the only way to prevent a secular polarization, which I think Western nations, US and Europe, are trying to promote, and Israel is supportive of this, confrontation, a standoff between Iran, representing the Shia influence, and Turkey representing and leading the Sunni groups in countries in the region. This is the worst thing that you can do to this region. A sectarian conflict is the bloodiest of all conflicts, and I know that Turkish leaders will realize this eventually, because the Turkish president himself drew attention to this danger when he opened the Turkish parliament back in October. He said sectarian conflict for the region is the greatest danger, and everybody must do, and everybody must be extremely careful to avoid such a prospect. So, to conclude, there are problems that need to be attended by the Turkish government to its foreign policy. But as I said, I think Turkey still basically preserves its democratic secular character, and we still have an important role to play in this region, but we have to get our policies right before that role becomes truly effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Loğoğlu. Ambassador, if you have time, we have to finish this at 5 to 4. So we have 25 minutes time. And Professor Köse told me that he could make his presentation in 10 minutes.
Sure.
So perhaps he may have opposing views to you, or you may have opposing views to him. So it will be good if you can stay here to listen to Professor Köse and also receive the questions together, and we benefit from the wisdom of both of you. Professor Köse, you have the floor.
I would like to thank ICD for inviting to this conference, and it's a pleasure to be with such a distinguished group of people. So in my presentation, I will focus on Turkey's conflict resolution approaches in the Middle East region, especially Middle East and Balkan region. So Ambassador Loğoğlu told what went wrong in the Turkish foreign policy in terms of its regional interventions, and my story is different. So I would like to emphasize in terms of conflict resolution what went right in the first several years of the Justice and Development Party administration. And I believe that the major transformation is not because of Turkey, but the rapid transformations in the Turkey's neighborhood. I mean, Iran's, Syria's, and Israel's policies have transformed drastically, and Turkey needed to address to those policies. So in the beginning, conflict resolution approaches have been used effectively. However, at this point, at this juncture, especially in the aftermath of the Syria crisis, Turkey needed to transform its policy. So I would like to emphasize what went right, especially in the beginning, how Turkey used, what are the Turkish method of conflict resolution, and these are new instruments in the Turkish foreign policy which we can take some examples in the future. So I would like to draw the white side of the story. So in this presentation, I will discuss new foreign policy identity and role in the region as order-building actor in Turkey, and feature of this new role will be emphasized, and how it's reflected in the field, and what are the limitations of this new approach. And during the ruling Justice and Development Party's tenure, Turkish foreign policy decision makers designated a new vision and new role for Turkey in global politics. And this new vision is defined as becoming a center country. And new role that's compatible with this vision is defined as order-building country. In order to actualize this role, Turkish foreign policy mobilized practical tools and instruments that were neglected before. Turkey acted like a regional peace broker and involved actively in many conflicts in the region as a third party. Turkey also tried to desecuritize her foreign policy by improving cultural economic integration with the neighboring countries, and paid special attention to structural peace-building efforts. Public diplomacy became one of the essential pillars of the Turkey's foreign policy practice. Turkey's third-party efforts are inspired from a holistic notion of regional order in which Turkey plays a central role. And this notion of regional peace that Turkey struggles for is intertwined with the notion of order, which Turkey emphasizes. And Turkey's efforts as a peace broker aims to constitute the notion of order. So Turkey has a specific notion of order, and both conflict resolution and coercive means tried to address this notion of order. And therefore, as a third party, Turkey played roles beyond the model of neutral facilitator or communicator. Turkey's role as a third party can rather be considered as a transformative in nature, transformative conflict resolution. And during the Cold War era, Turkey's strategic planning in the regional politics was rarely consistent with its regional interests. Besides, Turkey did not have strategic vision to devise an independent politics, necessary economic resources due to economic crisis and turmoil, and the political legitimacy due to political confrontation and domestic issues in Turkey. And Turkey also lacked diplomatic tools and expertise for conflict resolution in this period. So it was, and in addition to this, Turkish NGOs and Turkish economic actors did not have necessary economic backing and infrastructure to complement this diplomacy. So Turkey was the eastern wing of NATO, and Turkish diplomacy was focused mainly on the security orientation. And the mentioned obstacles and challenges resulted in the use of limited tools in foreign policy making. Security issues other than Cyprus and domestic security were considered within the framework of NATO, and conflicts were avoided as much as possible. The principle of peace at home and peace in the world was interpreted in a passive way, and conflicts around Turkey were often avoided. On the other hand, bilateral relations were held in adherence to classical diplomatic instruments and neutrality. And neutrality was put into practice more as inaction and often as indifference in the regional context. And the principles of policy adopted by Turkey can be summarized as follows. So support for status quo for protection of borders and territorial integrity, regional balance of powers based on multipolarity, and indifference to regional conflicts. In that period, Turkey did not take on active roles and risk as a third party for conflicts, among others. And during the Özal and Ismail Cem's foreign ministry, these policies have been tried to be changed, and new policies have been intertwined, but those policies couldn't be continuous in Turkish foreign policy. And Turkey's new foreign policy vision in the region as order-building actor became more visible starting with the second term of the Justice and Development Party administration, especially starting in 2007. And especially in the Middle East and North Africa was the main area where this new policy was actualized. Turkey played active third-party roles in Iran nuclear crisis, still playing role, between Syria and Israel, between Syria and Iraq, between the fighting factions and groups in Palestine, Iraq, and Lebanon. And until the recent Arab revolts, conflict resolution management instruments are actively utilized to implement the role of order-building actor. Turkey's experience as a peace broker in the recent years have demonstrated that a regional actor can play third-party roles as facilitator, communicator, mediator, conciliator, consultant, resource provider, capacity builder, decoupler, and promoter of holistic idea about regional peace and stability. So Turkey tried to actualize all these new instruments, and Turkish NGOs, business community, media, and academia also supported this process, which strengthened the overall impact of Turkey's activism. So Turkish diplomacy was not just based on the diplomatic efforts and foreign policy, but the civilian actors also contributed to this entire process. And conflict resolution pays specific attention to the psychological, socio-psychological aspects of the conflicts. So empowering non-governmental actors, consolidating multi-track mutual interactions, as well as reinforcing structural and institutional conditions of stable economy and society are emphasized in conflict resolution practice in international affairs. In addition to these general principles, conflict resolution provides international actors various practical instruments such as mediation, facilitation, arbitration, problem-solving negotiations, special delegations, public diplomacy, intercultural and intercommunal dialogue processes, and multi-track diplomacy. So all these instruments were new to Turkey's foreign policy, and Turkey tried to adopt these new concepts and new instruments. And Turkish foreign policy still lacks the institutional infrastructure and capacity to implement those instruments on a regular basis, yet those tasks are recently emphasized as the priority agenda in Turkish foreign policy. So, for example, protection of human rights, support for peace, security and democratization, support for development, humanitarian assistance in complex emergencies, development and emphasis on intercultural dialogue and conflict resolution are highlighted at Turkey's vision for United Nations Security Council candidacy for 2015 and 2016. So when you read what's the Turkish vision, you see this, and these are really highlighted as the Turkey's priority. And this vision also marks the change in the approach in Turkish foreign policy making. So the recent ongoing process is not a process that Turkey really wants, but it's something that Turkey needed to address. So Turkey's real future vision is emphasizing this. And Turkish diplomacy added new concepts such as rhythmic diplomacy, zero problem with the neighbors, strategic depth, shared historical and cultural references, total performance, country that can talk and communicate to all parties, security for all, and maximum cooperation to its foreign policy lexicon. So those are all new concepts that are introduced to Turkey's foreign policy lexicon. And Turkish diplomacy has invested in these concepts in order to overcome the historical, cultural, and political barriers that were constituted because of Turkey's imperial past, and more important, the Cold War legacy. So Turkish foreign policy believed that during the Cold War period and during the Ottoman era and the nationalistic era, Turkey has been disconnected with the peoples of the region, especially the Middle East, in the Balkans and the Caucasus. And Turkey reintroduced these new concepts, reconnect with those people and reconnect with these cultures. So nowadays, Turkey is considered as a highly respected mediator in the region, and Turkish views are often referred in the regional peace and stability efforts. The more visible and public aspect of this new activism is seen in Turkey's mediation, facilitation, and shuttle diplomacy activities in the regional conflicts. At the official level, certain cooperation and conflict resolution mechanisms were also established. So platforms such as the Caucasus Stability and Cooperation Platform, Alliance of Civilization Project, establishment of high-level strategic councils with Russian Federation, Greece, Iraq, and Syria tried to institutionalize this communication, cooperation, and conflict management efforts. Turkey also took over the Secretary of United Nations Least Developed Countries Office and conducted the fourth UNLDC summit in Istanbul. And economy, cultural exchange, public diplomacy, crisis management instruments became essential pillars of Turkish diplomacy. So how did Turkey do this activism? What are the principal, instruments and principles for Turkey within this entire process? So I don't have a lot of time, so I will just give the names of those, and I can spend more time during the discussion section. So one of the important factors which Turkey really emphasized was assertive mediation, active preventive diplomacy. So Turkey tried to use the mediation efforts in the region assertively, tried to engage with all the actors. And second, second principle for Turkey is making official and unofficial contribution to regional peace building and development efforts. So, building structural source of conflicts, economy and culture in the Palestine, in Afghanistan, within the NATO, EU, UN, and OECD. So Turkey is one of the emerging donors in international development aid. So that's another important factor behind Turkish new diplomacy. And the third factor is rhythmic diplomacy, or pursuing positive peace through crisis-free regular contacts. So which means that Turkey did not only focus on crisis, so did not only engage with the actors along the region just based on the crisis, but tried to develop positive relations to attain the process of positive peace when there's a common understanding between the other actors. So this was another important criteria for Turkey's new diplomacy. Fourth factor was creating common ground and using common language to facilitate consensus. So Turkey emphasized, so previously the Ottoman legacy or Turkey's cultural legacy has been considered as a barrier to Turkey's relations within the region, but Turkey tried to recapitalize on these relations, recapitalize on these cultural relations, and try to reuse the historical legacy in a positive sense. So this was another factor. And fifth factor is engaging with the spoilers. So some of the actors in the region have been excluded from the peace and reconciliation process, and without engaging with all these actors like the Sunni resistant groups in Iraq, Hamas, and other actors. So without engaging with these actors, it was impossible to attain a sustainable peace in the region. So Turkey, on the one hand, tried to continue mediation, but on the other hand, tried to keep some communication channels with those actors and tried to force these actors to peaceful processes and democratic processes. And especially in Iraq, Turkey was successful to bring the Sunni parties to the government. And the sixth principle was prioritizing the economic cultural tracks of foreign policy making. So there was crisis in the northern Iraq, but Turkish invested in the northern Iraq. So nowadays we are having big problems with Israel. There is crisis situation, but Turkish investors did not abandon investing in Israel. So although there are some diplomatic problems, Turkey still tried to continue economic and cultural relations, which is very important dimension. And lastly, I would emphasize that there were also Turkey used the controlled more criticism and discursive interventions. So when there are some problems like the cartoon crisis, when there is a cultural desecration of the Quran, when there are problems in the Iraq, Turkish foreign ministry criticized its Western allies in those and tried to emphasize that you should be more sensitive to those cultural issues, and supported the rights of the Africans, and sometimes in UN Turkey criticized the economic problems. So in that sense, Turkey used this criticism, and it also brings some popularity to the Turkish foreign ministry, Turkish prime minister. So all those principles have been coordinatedly emphasized in Turkish foreign policy. So there are definitely certain limitations. So I cannot say that this is a perfectly working foreign policy, but at least to a certain extent, Turkey gained new instruments, and Turkey gained new, paradigm in foreign policy, and we can talk about the limitations of this, new paradigm. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Köse. It looks like the Japanese film Seven Samurai, where three people watch the same events, and three of them remember what they have seen in different manner. So the two distinguished speakers are referring to the same facts, but their perception are different, and this offers to this distinguished audience more thought-provocative elements to ask questions. So I would like now to invite you to ask questions after you identify yourself.
Okay, we'll start here in the front.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, Professor. Two very thought-provoking presentations. Initially, I had misgivings because in your catalogue of the list of Turkish interventions, Somalia didn't come up. Somalia is part of the Arab League, so it's part of the Middle East. Ambassador, Turkey is going to host an international conference on Somalia in June. This follows the conference in London in March. What realistically do you hope to achieve by hosting a conference on Somalia, a very protracted conflict and very complicated in itself? So what does Turkey hope to achieve? And one of the criticism of the London conference was that it excluded some groups in Somalia, and that did not go very well with most Somalis. I myself was consulted by the British government, and we did advise them that the process should accommodate all the groups. So will the Istanbul conference be accommodated?
It is directed to you.
I think, Minister, you are more qualified to answer this question, but I will answer it in an oblique way. I think the interest of Turkey in Somalia is a good thing, that we are still paying attention to the problems of that country is a positive thing, because Somalia is basically now in the back burner of the international agenda. We too, as the main opposition party, we made a trip to the largest refugee camp in Kenya, not in the within the territory of Somalia. But I think the basic problem is to focus on the elimination of the internal strife inside the country, and the building of the economy and the building of institutions in Somalia. If Turkey can take that conference in that direction, I think Turkey would have done a great service to the people and the country of Somalia.
Thank you very much. You asked for the floor, I understand. Can you stand up and so that...
Carsten Müller from the Norwegian Institute for Cultural Heritage Research. Thank you very much for these two illuminating, though opposing, accounts of Turkish foreign policy. I was wondering, I don't think any of you mentioned one issue which I think is important in the equation also, how Turkey can operate in the region, and that much of the conflict that Turkey is sort of trying to address in the region has to do with, let's say, internal opposing identities within neighboring countries. And part of the equation is, of course, the Kurdish issue. There are Kurdish minorities in many of the countries in the region. Mm-hmm. You have your own Kurdish minority, which is, I know, a very difficult issue and very sore issue to tackle. But how do you see your Kurdish issue fitting into the agenda you have for operating as a powerful regional power? How do you balance these things? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the question addressed to both of the speakers?
Yes, please.
Okay, which one? Okay, Professor Köse.
I couldn't mention the limitations of this foreign policy. I think Turkey also failed to address some of the fundamental issues in Turkey. So Cyprus issue, you know, our relation with Armenia and the Kurdish issue are the biggest, I think, the obstacles to Turkey's new foreign policy. And I think Turkey tried to address especially the Kurdish issue through a process of sustained democratization, respect for human rights, as well as new constitution. Unfortunately, the process could not go as expected in a fast manner. And I think although the democratization process was planned to address those issues, the Kurdish side tried to focus more on the group rights, and there is not a common negotiation process. But on the other hand, we know that there was ongoing negotiations, the Oslo negotiations with PKK. There is the violence dimension of the, I think, this equation, and without addressing and without stopping the violence, the government did not want to get into more clear negotiations or political opening. And unfortunately, the process stopped because of this, at the moment of negotiating with the PKK. And nowadays, because it's publicly announced that there was ongoing negotiations, government do not want to, risk another failed process. So unfortunately, the process has been stuck. But I think there is a problem of, understanding from both sides. So the Kurdish politicians of the region, not the ones that are not part of the AKP, want to emphasize that the negotiations should be based on the group rights. On the other hand, AKP or JDP side want to address the issue through the broader democratization. And still, the problem of violence, ongoing violence, couldn't bring, realistic negotiations. And I think this is a very big problem for Turkey's foreign policy, both towards the Iraq, towards the Syria, as well as Iran. And without addressing these also, we cannot develop, sustained relations with Iraq. So I think this is the biggest obstacle. I also include the Cyprus issue. So it's a big scar in Turkish foreign policy, and without addressing that, it's so difficult to convince the international community that Turkey wants to constantly emphasize the conflict resolution. So, but these are the big issues. Yeah, I don't know the answer.
Well, whether Cyprus is already a scar or a live wound, we will see. But now I turn to Ambassador Loğoğlu to answer our Norwegian colleague's question.
Yes, a two-part answer to your question. One, a conceptual comment. You talked about multiple identities in the region. That's precisely one of the problems, structural problems of the current foreign policy of Turkey. That is, when you talk to the makers, decision makers in Turkey, Turkey is identified as a country of the Middle East, of Asia, of Europe, of Turkish, Muslim, a series of identities, which reflects the true situation in Turkey. But when you are not able to integrate those various dimensions of your identity into a coherent whole and tend to split it into parts, then you begin to become a party to the different conflicts and to the different parties around your country. That's a conceptual comment. A more operative comment on the Kurdish issue. The Kurdish problem, a small part in Armenia, a bigger part compared to Armenia and Iran, a very big part in Iraq, Syria, and also in Turkey. One impact, one consequence of the Arab Spring and also the events in the past events, the continuing events in Iraq and the events in Syria, is that the Kurdish identity is assuming a regional character. It is no longer the Syrian Kurdish problem or the Iraqi Kurdish problem or the Turkish Kurdish problem. There is more consultation, more cooperation, more collaboration among the different groups, Kurdish groups in the region, as well as outside the region. That's the Kurdish diaspora is also into the game. Of course, Turkey is still the country best poised to resolve this Kurdish problem by democratic means, within the rule of law and by democratic means. But I'm afraid the government of Turkey is acting a bit too slowly, a bit too narrowly on this issue, reverting back to a military solution to the problem. And if this trend continues, then we are going to see the emergence of a Kurdish problem of regional proportions. So I urge our authorities and the government of Turkey to speed up their efforts to resolve this problem by democratic means and in terms of human rights and the rule of law.
Thank you very much. Mark, do we have one more time for one question or one more question?
Sorry, response from Turkey in the context of Arab Spring vis-a-vis Libya, Egypt, and Tunis. I think it seems to me that the government was using this line of principled approach in foreign policy. So it was for human rights, protection of human rights, good governance. The Turkish government was the voice of the man in the street, so to speak. I'd like to know the view of the panel on the issue of Bahrain. Where was the Turkish government vis-a-vis Bahrain, where the thousands of people were put in the jail, when thousands of people tortured? Where was the principled approach of Turkish government in Bahrain?
Thank you. Who would like to take?
I'll go first, if I may. First of all, the principled approach of the Turkish government, its history doesn't go back very far. It's only about a year old. That is, it started with the events in Tunisia. Of all the 8-9 years that preceded the events in Tunisia, the Turkish foreign policy lexicon was neo-Ottomanism, the Commonwealth of Ottoman Nations, not Schengen, but Schengen. We are enough unto ourselves. This was the discourse. Hamas, Hezbollah, this constituted the discourse of Turkish foreign policy. But with the events in Tunisia, a radical turnaround, and then Turkey became the spokesman of democracy, of human rights, of freedoms, and whatnot, and whatnot. But then, coming to Bahrain, this is, of course, a very striking inconsistency in Turkey's approach to the region. The same problems exist in Bahrain, but there is no talk about Bahrain. In order to bring democracy and basic freedoms to Syria, the Prime Minister goes to where? Saudi Arabia. This doesn't hold. This doesn't hold. Those countries with which we enjoyed so intimate relations, like Libya and Egypt and Syria, it was the same people, the same regime, the same problems, but there wasn't talk about basic freedoms and democracy at the time. So I'm not going to say it's double standard. I'm going to say it is just a foreign policy devoid of principled approach, principled norms to what's happening around us.
Thank you. Professor Köse?
The only thing I will add to Ambassador Loğoğlu's comment is that I think the main concern for Turkey was emergence of a sectarian Cold War in the Middle East. So, I mean, we know that, we experienced the history of the Cold War, which disconnected Turkey from its neighbors. And Turkey's priority at this point is to do policies that would prevent sectarian Cold War. Of course, Saudi Arabia is part of this, Iran is part of it, and Turkey is unfortunately trying to be pushed into this sectarian Cold War. But the only principle that I know that's emphasized, just like the Cold War era, we don't want to experience a Cold War again that will disconnect the peoples of the regions, which can be sustained for a long time. So maybe answer should be with regard to this.
Thank you very much. Last question, if there is any. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm just a freelance writer. My name is Ceren. I think it was very stimulating with analytical, insightful analysis I have seen here. I just wonder whether, according to the UN reports, United Nations reports, it has been said that by the year 2050 there will be 1.4 million of immigrants in European Union, in Europe in general. So I would like to know your opinions. Any distinguished speaker can reply if needed. How this security architecture of Europe will be affected by this sort of immigration policies in the whole region? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think when we start to list the major global problems of our age, terrorism, economic growth, natural calamities, diseases, pandemics, and so forth, the list is a long one. But among them, one of the most important ones is probably international migration. And this is not simply the type of migration that we see today in terms of people seeking a better livelihood in elsewhere rather than in their own countries. That will continue, and the numbers will grow as a result of that. But there are worse predictions about continuing the effects of continuing climate change, resulting in the loss of cultivated land, resulting in years of drought, forcing masses, not just thousands, but masses of people to move from one area to another. If that occurs, of course, it's going to be a major catastrophic situation. But even in its present proportions, the French president running for re-election has threatened to cancel the Schengen agreement, to reinstitute border controls. Why? to control the migration into Europe. So I don't know how the world is going to handle this, but I agree it's going to be a big and growing problem for the international community to face.
Thank you very much, Professor Köse.
I think Europe is experiencing a big identity crisis. So on the one hand, you see the increase of, the strengthening of the nationalist, neo-Nazi, fascist parties all over the Europe. It's a general trend. On the other hand, there's increasing level of immigration. So the contradiction is that, is European countries going to continue their democratic values, the Enlightenment values, or are they gonna exclude the cultural other? So this is a big question, and unfortunately, if you look at the general trends, because of the economic crisis, because of the ongoing political issues in Europe, they are not giving a good example for the future, and we would expect more conflicts with regard to different cultures in the Europe. So if this level of increasing level of nationalism and neo-Nazi parties increases, this will also dismantle the idea of EU, and this will also affect the EU's relation with not only with Turkey but other Middle Eastern nations. So this is not a good thing for Europe, because Europe can only grow by further integration with the other regions. So this is not good for the future of Europe.
Thank you very much. This concludes our panel, and I would like to thank once more to Ambassador Loğoğlu and Professor Köse for this very pertinent and detailed remarks that they shared with us. And I'm very happy that Turkey is seen from different angles, how it looks when you look at it from different angles. So I believe that it has enriched the vision of the audience as well. I am very grateful to these two excellent speakers and panelists for their contribution, and I would like you to join me to thanking them.